All right, let's talk about something huge. U.S. missile ranges. We're going to go on a journey today, and it's a journey measured in thousands of kilometers. We're starting small, like battlefield small, and then we're zooming way out to a global scale. So let's jump right in.
So, let me ask you a question. How do you really measure power? I mean, you can talk about economies, you can talk about culture, but when you get down to brass tacks, to hard power, one of the clearest ways to measure it is reach, right? It's all about how far you can project your influence. How far can you actually strike?
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're dealing with here, look at this. On one side, you've got a battlefield missile that goes maybe 4 kilometers. On the other, an intercontinental missile that can travel over 13,000 kilometers. I mean, that's the difference between hitting something just over the next hill and hitting something on the other side of the planet. That is the journey we're about to take.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. First up, the battlefield view. We're talking up close and personal. Then we'll zoom out a bit to beyond the horizon. After that, we'll get into global strike capability. Then this really cool new thing called the hypersonic edge. And we'll finish up at the top of the food chain, intercontinental power.
So, let's kick things off with Section 1, the battlefield view. This is where the fight is right in your face, where you're dealing with an immediate threat.
We're really starting at a human scale here. This is all about soldiers on the ground in the middle of it all. The weapons we're talking about aren't for hitting faraway cities, they're for winning the firefight you're in right now, for handling threats that are just over the next ridgeline.
And you've probably heard of some of these, right? The Javelin gets you about 4 kilometers. The Stinger can reach out to 8, and the Hellfire pushes it just a little past 10 kilometers. These are absolutely critical tools, but their influence, it's all about that immediate fight right there on the ground.
Okay, now we take a huge leap. We're going beyond the horizon. We're expanding our view from just a single battle to having a whole regional influence. And trust me, the game completely changes.
And this is our first major jump. We are leaving that close-up and personal battlefield behind. The targets aren't even visible anymore, and you're definitely not walking these distances. We're going from just a few kilometers to hundreds of kilometers. The whole way you think about strategy has to shift.
Now this is where things get really interesting. Look at the variety and the massive jump in what these things can do. You've got short-range systems like the Naval Strike Missile or ATACMS, that's the Army Tactical Missile System, and they're pushing out to around 300 kilometers. Then you jump into the medium-range stuff like JASSM. That's a mouthful, stands for Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile. And the new Precision Strike Missile, which can hit targets 700 kilometers away, or even more. We're not talking about frontline targets anymore. This is about hitting really important stuff deep, deep behind enemy lines. Let's just pause on that number for a second. 300 kilometers. That's the range of that ATACMS we just mentioned. But what does 300 kilometers actually feel like?
Well, to put that in perspective, it's roughly the distance from Paris to Brussels. All of a sudden, you're not just influencing one little battle. You can now hit key targets. Think airfields, command centers, big supply depots, way inside another country's territory. And that's the key takeaway here. The fight has just gone from tactical to deeply strategic. It's regional now.
All right, time for another massive jump in scale. Section 3, global strike capability. Now we're literally talking about crossing oceans and entire continents with just one weapon.
And this brings us to one of the most famous missiles ever made, the Tomahawk. You've definitely heard of this one. It's a cruise missile, so it basically flies like a little unmanned jet, hugging the ground to stay off radar. And it can travel up to 2,500 kilometers. You also have things that are launched from planes, like the ALCM, the Air Launched Cruise Missile, and its replacement, the LRSO, or Long Range Standoff Weapon. All of them have these just mind-boggling ranges.
Think about that. 2,500 kilometers, that's about the distance from New York City all the way down to Dallas. A weapon launched from a ship out in the middle of the ocean can now hit a specific target deep inside a continent. This is what true global reach looks like.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second. We're going to take a little detour from just talking about range, because there's a new factor that's changing absolutely everything. Welcome to Section 4, the hypersonic edge. This is where speed completely redefines the battlefield.
So for these next-gen weapons, range is only half the picture. The other, maybe even more important half, is speed. We're talking unbelievable, incredible speed, more than 5 times the speed of sound. Now what that does is it just crushes a defender's reaction time. It makes these things almost impossible to stop with the kind of defensive systems we have today.
So the big names to know here are the Air-Launched Rapid Response Weapon, or ARW, the Navy's Conventional Prompt Strike, and the Army's Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon. Yeah, their ranges are impressive, no doubt. But when you combine that kind of reach with hypersonic speed and the ability to maneuver, you get a weapon that could make even the best air defenses totally obsolete. It's a real game changer.
And that brings us to our final stop, the very top of the pyramid. Section 5, Intercontinental Power. This is it, the absolute apex of global reach. Okay, we're talking about the big ones now, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles, or ICBMs. And these are a whole different animal. Unlike a cruise missile that flies through the air, a ballistic missile shoots way up into space, kind of flies in a big arc, and then comes screaming back down on its target at insane speeds. You've got the Trident II launched from submarines, the Minuteman III sitting in silos, and its replacement, the Sentinel. You know, these weapons aren't really for fighting a war. Their whole point is deterrence. They're designed to be so unbelievably powerful that they stop a war from ever happening in the first place. 13,000 kilometers. That is a truly planetary distance. From a launch site in, say, North Dakota, you can hit basically any point in the Northern Hemisphere. This isn't about winning a battle or a regional fight anymore. This capability shapes the entire global security landscape.
And this right here, this just brings it all home. Look at this. On the left, that's where we started, the Javelin, a weapon for a 4-kilometer fight. On the right, that's where we ended up, the Sentinel, with a range of over 13,000 kilometers. It can hit pretty much anywhere on the planet. I mean, the technological leap between those two is just, it's staggering.
So yeah, we've gone from a weapon that can cross a few kilometers on a battlefield to a weapon that can strike halfway around the globe. We've seen how range can turn a simple tactical tool into a regional weapon, and then finally, into a cornerstone of global power. So that kind of leaves us with one final big question. We've gone from the battlefield to the entire planet. And as this technology just keeps getting faster and reaching further, what does this whole spectrum of power really mean for the future, for conflict, for stability, for everything? That's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.